Is it time for you? Okay, I'm done. But, oh, I know what it is. It's because when it changes to purple, it goes to Craig. Sorry. Thank you for listening. Hey, can I ask one thing while I'm here? How many parents are in the audience? So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think we have 7. I think there's another one up there. One thing I can tell you is I'm going to work with you while you're gone. And we can talk when you get anxiety and everything else. But I want to let you know, I just want to thank you for coming, actually, because it's so important to the whole success of the whole thing.
Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Craig. I know several of you. I've seen a lot of the faces that I don't know. I advise for our programs in Latin America and in Italy, as well as a lot of the programs that are through third-party providers or external study abroad providers. So most of the students in these two front rows are actually my students. So I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about during your programs some policy information that you guys should be aware of. First of all, I'm going to talk about the study list. This study list actually applies primarily to EAP students. So the study list is something that you don't want to forget about, for one. Sometimes you guys will be a little bit more independent in terms of selecting your classes and enrolling in courses and going through a lot of the day-to-day because maybe you're at a host university in the UK or someplace like that. And you're going to need to register at your host university. Sometimes it's a registration, sometimes you just show up and you take the exam. Depends on where you're studying and what university and kind of what that culture is. And you'll get more information as you talk to the trainees. The second thing is when you study abroad, especially through EAP, you need to register your study list online through My EAP. So My EAP is basically where you record your classes. So if you take a class with your host university, but you don't put it on your My EAP study list, you can take the class, you can do really well in it, and then it won't show up on your transcript because EAP, or the University of California, didn't know that you actually took that class. Same thing if you need to drop that class. If you do it in one place but you don't do it in the other, that's going to show up on your grades. Oh, I thought I dropped this class, but it's showing up as an F or an incomplete. It's because you might not have dropped it off of your EAP study list. So this applies to EAP students, and it's really important if you have a dual registration process. Not every program does, but if you have a dual registration process where you need to register with the host university and with EAP online, you need to do both of those processes. In some programs, Rome and Paris and some of the others, you might only be registering on My EAP. And that's the only step you need. Now for IOP students, and I'm mostly talking to the front two rows over here, courses that you guys have already had pre-approved, as long as those courses don't change and you take those courses or courses from that list of courses, then you won't need to worry about the transfer of those courses back to the University of California. However, if you decide to take courses from outside of that listing, you need to send those courses and their syllabi to our office in order to get approval for those courses. Without that, you might lose financial aid eligibility, and you might lose the possibility of those courses transferring back to the University of California. The other thing is while you're studying abroad, you want to be in touch with your academic advisor. Your academic advisor is your link back to your major and back to your degree requirements. So as you study abroad, as you start selecting courses, as you start looking for courses, sometimes you won't be registering until you get there. Sometimes you'll be registering maybe 3 or 4 weeks before you leave. And in some cases, you might have already registered. And again, there are a few where you don't actually register, you just show up and you take the exam, but hopefully you're taking classes in the meantime. For those courses, as long as you're making a change in your course list, you want to work with your academic advisor in Shaw and Natural Sciences and Engineering, or maybe with your undeclared advisor to talk about the courses that you're taking, especially if it's a change from what shows up on your academic planning form or your academic information and review form. And of course, they like to see syllabi because that gives them more information and helps them to better advise you. So how many of you guys are seniors? How many of you guys are planning on spending your last semester or last term abroad? Still a few of you. Okay, so I'm really targeting you guys right now. So for one, you should be taking a full course load. This especially applies to EAP, but applies to IOP if you're hoping to get financial aid. You will need to have a full course load in order to participate in EAP. You will need to have a full course load in order to be eligible for financial aid. Petitions, if you need to petition for certain things, particularly for courses to return, one thing that you do need to keep in mind is that it takes time for your grades to come back to the University of California. So you might be spending your last semester overseas or your last summer overseas as a UC Merced student, but that doesn't mean that's your last term technically as a UC Merced student. See, it takes roughly 60 to 90 days for your courses to come back to UC Merced. Sometimes 120, but we try to get, especially EAP tries to get it in that 60 to 90 day window. If you are slow in getting the transcripts back from your provider, and for the most part that's going to be the University of Virginia in semester at sea, if you're in the front two rows over here, if you're slow in getting those transcripts back, it might take even longer. But EAP is usually in the 60 to 90 day window for those grades and courses to come back, which means if you're going abroad summer, and that's hopefully your last term, you won't be able to declare candidacy for graduation until fall. If you're going abroad fall, and that's your last term as a UC Merced student, you will not be able to declare candidacy until spring. You don't have to take classes during that last term, but it does take time for those classes to return, to show up on your transcript, and for you to be able to petition for academic credit. The other thing that I want to talk to you guys about, especially if you're going abroad as seniors, is commencement. Commencement is different from graduation. Hopefully some of you already know the difference, but commencement is when you participate in the graduation ceremony. Commencement is when they give that address. You know, several years ago it was Michelle Obama who gave the commencement address here on campus. So this year it'll be somebody else. But walking across that stage, we call that commencement, even though you might call it graduation. Graduation to us is the completion of your degree requirements. So you might be able to participate in commencement, but still graduate technically or complete the rest of your requirements or show the rest of your requirements on your transcript the next semester. So that's very possible. But we want to make sure that you get the difference, because sometimes you'll be talking to the office of the registrar or another office, and you might be confusing those two terms. But they're different. So yes, you can spend your last term abroad. Yes, you can participate in a commencement ceremony, maybe even right after your program or right before your program, but you can't actually graduate at the end of your program. You have to wait until your grades come back. The next thing is you might want to check the registrar's website, particularly for various petitions, various forms that you might need, especially related to graduation. So keep in mind, this is a pretty easy website to remember, but again, if you have any, you can always come back to our office or to other resources, or if you have questions or if you forgot where to go to, we're always there to help. But the registrar's website has a lot of information, particularly about graduation. And I already explained the delay in grades, but that's fairly typical. If students have to petition for a grade change and you're going to graduate, this is especially pertinent to the second point, you want to get those petitions rolling as soon as possible. So maybe they made a mistake, maybe they maybe they recorded the wrong name of your course, they gave you the wrong course, or maybe you think that you deserved an A but they gave a C, maybe because they forgot a paper, something that you turned in but it doesn't show up. And so you want to get those petitions rolling as soon as possible. During your program, we want to talk about coursework. And again, people make mistakes, and that's a lot of what this slide is about. So professors lose papers. I remember it happened to me as an undergraduate. I got a C+, and I was expecting at least an A. And I was really surprised when I saw that on my transcript, and I figured out it was because he somehow missed the email that included my paper. But always keep copies of everything. Keep copies of everything that you do when you study abroad. So if it's papers, if it's assignments, everything of any significance, if it's a little homework assignment, most universities abroad don't have daily homework in the same way that we do, where you turn in individual papers almost on a daily basis for some courses. That's pretty rare abroad. You're more going to be looking at exams and papers that you're going to be writing, and those are going to be what's going to be important in case we need to review your grade retroactively to see if there was some sort of error, or if you actually deserved a different grade than you received. So keep a copy, especially of those papers, and if you can get copies of your exams, that's even better. Sometimes you won't be able to get those copies. So keep in mind you want to keep a copy of everything, and that includes your texts, because sometimes they might not know whether a course actually covers a lot of the same material that you would normally need to cover here at UC Merced, but knowing what text you read and that text is similar, has similar content, or might be the exact same text that you would have read here would really go a long way in terms of giving you credit for the course that you're trying to get credit for.